Welcome into Real Deal Sports Talk. This is KP. All right, I'm just going to hit it off. I'm very disappointed. I know some of y'all out there are disappointed if you know what's going on today. It was the Hall of Fame game. It was supposed to be the first game of the season. Football was supposed to be back. And because the field was all messed up, torn up, teams decided to get together and postpone the game, potentially play it next week, whatever. It doesn't matter if they play it next week now. The point is, the first game of the season's over. The thing I was going to talk about with you guys first on the show is now over. That's why I'm doing the show early tonight. I decided to just go ahead and get it done, get at you guys right after the news came out, let you know what's going on, and share in the disappointment as the news breaks with all of you out there who are anticipating the game like I was. So instead of talking about the game and going over, what the first team offenses and defenses look like for the couple of reps, and did Aaron Rodgers get in, and how'd Andrew Luck look, and things of that nature, I guess I'll do the other stereotypical Hall of Fame conversation, and we'll talk about this year's Hall of Fame class, which, of opinions, there are many. This year, I have to say overall, the Hall of Fame committee did a much better job selecting a class that's Hall of Fame worthy and not just Hall of very good or Hall of pretty good on a good team. You look at the guys on the list this year. You got the Brett Favre, the Kevin Green, Eddie DeBartolo Jr., Ken Stabler, Dick Stanfel, Orlando Pace, Tony Dungy, Marvin Harrison, and then also receiving an award that we'll talk about is Chris Mortensen, or an honor, I should say. So, of those names, you could argue if you say you don't know some of the older names, you don't know a Dick Stanfel, or maybe you didn't see a Kenny Stabler play, or maybe you didn't see Eddie DeBartolo Jr. do what he did there with the 49ers before he moved on to Cleveland for a little while. Maybe you don't know those guys. Maybe your history in the game doesn't go back that far. That's fine. Mine doesn't, honestly. Stabler was before my time. What he did with the Raiders and the Oilers and the Saints it's all before me. The Snake, he was the Snake first. Came out of Alabama. Had a nice career in the NFL. He was consistent. He changed the way the game was played. So I guess that's his calling card to get in, was his presence on some of those Oakland Raider teams and what he did to change the quarterback position. It wasn't so much his dominating stats, he had to reinvent himself later in his career and become more of a pocket passer after injuries slowed him down, and he did that with success. However, he wasn't, a top 10 in stats guy. He doesn't have a ton of championships. He has a championship, which for most quarterbacks, it seems like that could be the thing that gets you in if you have decent numbers. Again, he was on those Oakland Raider teams that were great. So if, he's the guy dishing the ball out and some of his players are in, you figure, why isn't he in? Man, I gotta say, I'm disappointed the game's not being played, man. Damn. So, there's guys that could be before your time. Eddie DeBartolo, what he did there was in San Francisco with Bill Walsh and Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and John Taylor and Bryant Young and Dana Stubblefield and Charles Haley and Merton Hanks and Roger Craig and Tom Rathman. The list goes on and on and on and on and on with what San Francisco was able to accomplish while Eddie DeBartolo was running the team, while he owned the team, while they were doing what they were doing there. We all know he left the 49ers. Some people didn't like that. Some people didn't like the way it went down. Some people didn't like a whole bunch of stuff. People don't like things. That's sports. Everybody has an opinion. I believe I heard during the induction ceremony they said something like the 49ers during a 13-year period between like 85 and 98 averaged averaged 13 wins a season. Now, they didn't say if they were including playoff victories and things like that into the total wins they averaged. But nonetheless, 13 wins a season they averaged for about 13 years. That's amazing. That's an owner putting into the team. That's an owner believing in the coaches and letting the process work. That's not what you see in Washington. It's not what you see with the great Jerry Jones in Dallas. Although I have to say he has stepped back, it seems like, a little bit more recently. It's what you see here in Denver with Pat Bowlen. And hopefully what you're going to see moving forward after Joe Ellis and the Broncos organization goes through the process here over the next few years of probably finding a new owner. As some of the Bolden children have stepped away from the foundation that currently is responsible for running the organization. Almost like they don't have interest, but they would gladly take the paycheck. So, you know, those are some of the older guys. Oh, and Stink, Mark Schlereth, just so you can put this in your pipe and smoke it. Dick Stanfill, another Lion, Hall of Fame. So, you know, you want to talk about storied franchises and how bad Detroit is. And every time you want to talk about the good, you talk about the Broncos. And when you talk about the bad, you want to bring up the Lions. Well, there's another one of our former players, another part of our history who is in the Hall of Fame there. So just putting that out there again, Stink. Just got to put you out there on blast a little bit since you like to put the Lions on blast all the time. Now let's get into the thick of it. The names that people really know, the names that most of the fans paying attention last night knew and were excited to see. And we'll start off with the big one, right? Let's start off with the big name on the list. We're not going to save him for last like they did last night. We'll talk about Brett Favre, right? His 34-minute speech last night covered a lot of stuff. It was a good speech to hear. It was a long speech to hear. You normally don't get Hall of Fame speeches that run quite that long. Then again, it's Brett Favre, special privilege, right? When Peyton Manning goes in, we'll probably get another ridiculously long speech. So Brett Favre, Green Bay Packers, great. Green Bay Packers, great. What do you say about him that hasn't been said? He's a gunslinger, right? He's the guy who loved to play ball. He was smart enough to understand the game and know the game inside and out. But when he went out there, he still played with that neighborhood street ball mentality, like he was playing out on the street in front of the house, and at any minute he could have to go car, and everybody scatters. That's to me what I saw when I saw Brett Favre play. And believe me, I watched him play a lot. Not only was he on a good team, so he was on here locally a lot for the nationally televised games, but I tried to catch him every time he played the Lions. That's twice a year. He was in the playoffs. His teams were consistently good. He was consistently in the highlight reels on the Sports Center. NFL Live. Sunday Morning Countdown. Chris Berman loves to talk about Brett Favre. Brett Favre had a great career. Brett Favre should not have split the MVP with Barry Sanders. I did not agree with that. It should have gone to Barry Sanders when he rushed for 2,053 yards in the season on that Lions team that went 9-7 and made the playoffs. Now, we were ousted the first round, but Barry Sanders was by far the most valuable player in the league that year and should not have had to have split that award with Brett Favre because of the media hype, and Mr. John Madden loved Brett Favre so much that it was like, oh, we'll split it. That's a great idea. No, bad idea. It shouldn't have been split. Didn't agree with that. That's the one thing in his career that it irks me. It doesn't irk me that in the 93 season, him and Sterling Sharp teamed up for that Hail Mary that beat us. It doesn't irk me that he played for the rival Packers for so long and tormented the Lions. It doesn't irk me that he brought the titles back to Green Bay and Detroit's still trying. He's the type of football player I enjoy watching. He loves to compete. He loves to compete so much he probably played in games he shouldn't have in his streak of consecutive games played. which will never be broken. That's one of those things, one of those records that won't be touched. You're not going to find another player in this age of health awareness and big money, one, who's going to play long enough to get to that mark, or two, who's going to risk their body or their future to get out there because they love the game so much. Not because they don't care, or they want to hurt their team or anything like that, but because they love the game so much, they're going to give everything they had, and if they possibly could, they're going to be out there. That's the type of player Brett Favre was. He loved the game, always had a smile on his face. Even when he did some ridiculous, let me switch it to my other hand and throw it around this way, underhand, loop-de-loop type throw, had a smile on his face, loved razzing the guys, loved his enthusiasm, loved his leadership. And, I mean, you hear the stories. We don't need to talk about the numbers. The numbers speak for themselves. When he retired, he led in almost every statistical category for a quarterback in NFL history. We know now Peyton Manning has come around and put his name at the top of all those lists. And in 4 years, 5 years, we'll be talking about Peyton Manning. But what I remember about Brett Favre, one of the games I remembered, and one of the things that got me about his speech last night, was that he spent his whole career trying to make his dad proud. And I think there's a lot of athletes out there, even athletes who grew up without their fathers, that spend their careers hoping that same thing. And I remember after his father passed away, the game that nobody thought he would play in. And honestly, at the beginning of the game against the Raiders that night, I thought the Raiders were going to beat the Packers. I really thought it was going to help the Lions out, and the Raiders were going to take the Packers down, because how do you come and play in a nationally televised game and get up for something like that when you just lost your dad? So he comes out in that game and arguably has the best game of his career. Right around 400 yards passing. 3 or 4 touchdowns. I mean, just carves the Raiders up all night long. Raiders had no answer for him. No answer at all. And I'll always remember that was a great game. I was in awe of that game. That he really showed his greatness in that game. And as a lot of players do, he played a lot of years in Green Bay, and a lot of players don't want to just stop when the team feels like, hey, we've got this other option. We want to move in another direction. And he went on, and, you know, we know about the 1 year in New Jersey and the cell phone pick and all that nonsense with the Jets. But then he went on to revive his career and have a really good time there in Minnesota, which the NFL apparently took upon themselves without telling Brett Favre, he says, to put both a Packers and a Vikings jersey in his locker in Canton. Left the Jets jersey out. Apparently that year wasn't important. But put both rival teams' jersey in the Brett Favre locker at Canton. A lot of fans got irked by it. I understand it. That time that he had the classic game, the classic NFC Championship game, the Vikings and the Saints, where he just got beat to a pulp and kept going. That's what they're going with. They're just honoring another great part of his career. However short, he is a Packer. He'll always be remembered as a Packer. It'll be an afterthought that he played for other teams. And, you know, you got to love that he joked about coming back and, you know, jabbed Aaron Rodgers a little bit. And I mean, he's still just one of the guys. And that's one of the things that you'll always remember about Brett Favre the most. He just seemed like one of the guys, the Wrangler guy, you know. He's in the commercials. Another one that just seemed like one of the guys, kinda, Kevin Green. There was nothing really special about him ever, but what you noticed is he was always there. He was always around the ball. He's in the top 5 in sacks in NFL history.